Hello. Hi, Brie.
Hey,
How are
Bruno.
you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good as well. I'm good as well. So, first of all, thank you very much for doing this with me. So, I'm going to be interviewing you. So, with a couple of questions. So, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Bruno. I work at GitLab as a support engineer. Brie, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Brie Carranza. I'm a senior support engineer at GitLab. I help customers and I help other engineers help customers.
Awesome. 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 And other engineers like me. Okay. So, what we're doing here, just for context, what we're doing here is like during our amazing pairing sessions together, I noticed that you have so many valuable skills and practices, and your entire workflow, amazed me. So I'd like you to share a bit of that experience and knowledge and workflow with other people around the world, like our team members first, but then other people around the world. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and yeah, you can expand a bit more on like how you operate and how you basically view the world. Is that okay with you?
I love it. I'm excited. Let's do this.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I'm going straight to the first question. So how did you get here? Like at GitLab? Like, can you like tell a bit about your like education, your first jobs, hardships, experiences, and then like how you actually joined GitLab? Like,
For sure. So, in terms of education, I got a lot of on the job learning. So, my first job in tech, I was like 16. Well, my first official job in tech, I was like 16. I did networking jobs, getting paid under the table from like when I was 13. So, I've learned a lot of things just, hey, you're the intern, you get to go do this not glamorous job. But I learned a lot about how important production is. Like I was 16 and I was pulling network cables in a data center, and I understood that if you pull the wrong cable, bad things happen. And so that was like really the introduction to like, this is what is important about prod. And it's very like on the job. I did study IT type stuff. So like I studied IT in undergrad at Slippery Rock University. After that, I worked for 2 years at a web hosting company. Talk a little bit about like hardships and stuff there, but just to finish like the education, I did then get my graduate degree in cybersecurity from Carnegie Mellon. So that's sort of like what formal education looks like for me. My first job out of college, like I mentioned, was at a web hosting company. Hardships. I worked at night. I worked nights. So like midnight to 8 a.m. And that was not always, it was like cool in some ways. Driving home at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's no one on the road going in that direction. It's kind of cool. It was a domain name registrar. So I got to register domain names. That was
how
very
cool is
cool and fun,
that?
obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, right.
yeah.
There were fewer TLDs then, but that's for another time. Yeah, memorable experiences. I do want to mention a cool thing I did in undergrad that I try to build on whenever I can. So I had a professor at Slippery Rock who taught programming to Girl Scouts, and
Mm.
he was seeking volunteers to help. And I was like, done. I will do that. Easy. So we taught them Alice. I don't know if you know the Alice programming
Yeah,
language.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Alice is
yeah,
so
I did.
cool. So you're like,
Yeah.
you have 3D figures and you say, hey, rotate 15 degrees or whatever. And so there's this
Yeah,
visual component to it. And
yeah.
it was amazing what children can do with computers if you just believe in them. So
Sure.
that was like, I'll never forget that. When I was at CMU, I got to help start an internship program to encourage women to get into tech. And that was just so cool. I'm very passionate about that topic for reasons. So that was really cool. But fast forwarding to GitLab, that was a really interesting time. So I joined GitLab in May of 2020. And I think we all remember what the world was like in May of 2020. I'd been using GitLab for a few years before then, and I loved it. I was like, this is so cool. It's just such a cool product. How could you not? So in 2020, I was looking for like different, more exciting challenges. I was looking for a bigger pond. And I didn't realize this until after the time, but I completely switched industries, Bruno. I went from
Wow.
being in IT to being in DevOps. And
Yeah.
like we could have a whole long conversation about like what's different and similar between the two and what is a systems administrator and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I read the values page and I was like, if this is all what it says, this is amazing. This is the place I was looking for and an amazing product. 3 years in, I love it. It's awesome.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, like wow. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Yeah, I also worked at nights. Like and I remember, yeah, I remember driving back home when roads were like empty, no cars,
Mhm.
and sleepy as well. Wow, wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I do have other questions, so let's go straight to them. So I am extremely curious about how do you structure your days, like your weeks or careers, or your weeks and like all areas in your career, sorry. Like you have such an organized way of working, right? That I like to know if it's intentional or if it's something that you do when you start your day, or is it something that you do when you start the week? Like how does it all work? Like can you tell us a little bit about that?
For sure. So I'll give you one bit of context and then I'll explain it.
Sure.
So prior to joining GitLab, I was in grad school and I had two roles
Mhm.
at CMU. Like I was one full-time person, obviously, but I had two distinct roles. So Bruno,
Oh,
I had to be organized.
yeah.
I didn't have a, there's no choice. There's no choice. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not going to do anything poorly.
Hmm.
So I've got to have some organization and structure. And I've brought a lot of that structured thinking, I guess, with me. So I do it fairly naturally. I don't know if you ask, some days if you ask me, I'll say, oh yeah, I'm 9 out of 10 organized. Some days if you ask me, Bruno, I'm like, I'm 3 out of 10 organized. I'm struggling. So I'm glad it looks, great from the outside, but it's
It
not
it looks
every day
great.
I'm smashing it.
Yeah.
I will tell you a couple different things that I do. One thing that I do that, ooh, I can't help myself but to do. So in my home directory, I always have a folder for the year.
Wow.
And then I have like 05 May. And then so for today, I have a folder 05-Friday. And
Wow.
so every day I have a folder for, and then in those folders, I'll have whatever I cloned that day and then like tickets. So that lets me do things like LS and get stats and see how many different days was I working on that ticket. And if you see a ticket come up like
Wow.
8 different days, that's bad. What is happening? It's probably a very annoying ticket. And it's all in Markdown. So that just, it makes me happy. I use Google Calendar. Google Calendar
Hmm.
is a boring solution, but let me tell you how I use it.
Hmm.
I use it to like visualize, this is obvious, but I use it to visualize my time. So I put on my calendar working on, if I have like two tickets that like I need to focus on, I'll put NRT for ticket number and
Oh,
that's 90 minutes. Okay. So then if someone says, hey, can you do this? I can look at my calendar and say yes or no
it's
because
right there.
yeah. Now, obviously, if something's going to take 5 minutes or 15 minutes, I don't put it on my calendar. What I say about structure and organization is you should have as much structure as is necessary, no more and no less. I think
Yeah.
it's really right to like get that right because too much structure and all you're doing is busy work, but not enough structure and you could be more efficient. You could do a better job. Another thing that is super helpful, clockwise.
Just want to go back a little bit really quickly. Do you do
Go for it.
that, the calendar thing? Like, do you do it on a daily basis or on a weekly basis? Like yeah, how
Gotcha.
do you, yeah,
Sure.
how do you do that?
So clockwise schedules some things for me. I don't do a ton of, how do I say? I usually, I always start my day by looking at my calendar, obviously.
Hmm.
Before I sign off, I look at my calendar for the next day.
Hmm.
I don't use the calendar for much of the week-long view for week-long planning. For
Mm.
that, I use my one-on-one issue with my manager. So I'll lay
Oh,
out
cool.
these are my priority. I think we're going to talk about one-on-one planning, but I'll just do it now. I lay out my top priorities for the week. My
Mhm.
one-on-ones with my manager are on Monday.
Got it.
And that just makes me very happy because it's just a natural cadence for the week. I think everyone
Flow.
should have one-on-ones
Mhm.
on Mondays. I don't know if I could go back to one-on-ones on not a Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. And in that way, the weeks, I mean, I'm always planning out like pairing sessions or whatever. So the weeks kind of take care of themselves now. Maybe I'm not thinking fully about it. The weeks get taken care of in that way. I'll tell you an important, going back to clockwise,
Yeah, please. Mhm.
Bruno, I used to be very bad at not going to lunch.
Oh,
Like many, many years ago, I would say, oh, yeah, I'm going to take my lunch later. I'm going to take my lunch at 2. I'm going to take my lunch at 3. Now it's 4:30. You just didn't take a lunch, Brie.
yeah.
And clockwise, I am so thankful to clockwise because I take a lunch. Sometimes I skip it, but I usually take a lunch break and I
Yeah.
walk away from my computer. I leave this room, I pet my cat, I go for a walk.
Yeah.
It's great. And that's important
Awesome.
because if I sit in front of the computer for 8 days, what I'm for 8 hours, at the end of that eighth hour, it's not good what I'm typing. That's not
Yeah,
helpful to anyone. I need to take
exactly.
a break. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that I find really helpful for structuring days is the stand-up threads. So I don't know if you,
Mm.
I'll, we'll find a way to put a screenshot or something of my stand-up threads, but Bruno, I put what I'm doing in chronological order. So I'll have all my pairing sessions and meetings and whatever from my calendar. I'll also have, this is what capacity I have for FRT. This is a quick summary of the NRT tickets I'm working on. And if it's something like, oh, I have this weird LDAP problem I can't solve, I'll put a little note about that. That way, if someone else in
Mhm.
my SGG is an LDAP expert or has seen something similar or whatever, they can see it. So I think those stand-up threads are a great way to, another great way to like get help. It's a passive ask,
Yes. Yeah.
but I read what other people write and I can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, I've seen that. Have you seen this issue? You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Got it.
yeah, the other thing I do is use my Slacks. I am very deliberate with my Slack status.
Hmm.
So you can tell what I'm doing. One other thing that I do that's like organizational, sometimes if it gets to the end of the day and my brain is just going, I'll say, you know what, I'm going to come back and wrap up later. So I'll set a Slack status like back in a bit to wrap up. When I come back, I put the present emoji and I say wrapping up. And Bruno, I'm only looking at Zendesk and maybe GitLab issues. I'm probably not going to respond to you on Slack. It'll
Yeah. Yeah.
say, see you
Yeah.
tomorrow. That means
Bye bye.
I'm trying to shut things down for the day.
Yeah. 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 I've seen your Slack status and it's, yeah, you do it manually, right? Like this bugs me a bit. Like, are you doing it manually? Are you doing, yeah. So do you have some sort of automation to do that for you? Or like, how do you deal with that?
It's mostly it's mostly clockwise and manual. I do fight with clockwise a lot. It has its own
Nice.
ideas about how I'm going to spend
But
my time, but it's mostly
yeah,
clockwise and manual. Yeah.
got it. Got it. Awesome. Awesome. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I also noticed that you are, first of all, you're always learning new stuff. And this is still part of that same question, but yeah, you're always learning something. You're always growing. And I noticed that you have some kind of exposure, in the what would I call it? In the support community, like as a whole. So I've read your talks. Basically, I've seen slides from your talks. So I've seen you're doing the work here, but you're also growing and you're also exposing yourself. So I'd like to know, how do you like manage your time in order to be able to do those things regularly? Because I've seen that you, from time to time, you'll post something, and it'll not affect your work, ability. So it's brilliant. So I'm just curious on like, how do you do it?
I love this question so much. I'm rather deliberate about this. So
Yeah.
there's two big things that I put in this category. But before that, I want to say something. The always learning.
Yes. Always learning,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
I can't, I, this time at GitLab, it's been the longest time since I was an infant that I was not in an educational environment.
Wow.
So perpetual learning is just baked into every bit of who I am. So if I'm not learning, I'm not Brie. Come get me, something is like gone wrong, you know?
Love that.
I thank you. I gave this like speech to audition to be a student speaker when I graduated. And in
Mhm.
that speech, one of the things that I said was about how important it is to retain a sense of curiosity
Yes.
about the world and how well that will serve people. That was like 3 years ago now. And I don't want to like sit here and quote myself, but that was
Please do.
impactful.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
But
yeah.
to answer your question, so two things, the blog. I believe in public goal setting for some
Mm.
things. And my blog is a little bit of that. I
Oh,
started writing a little bit more frequently towards the end of last year, and I'm a big New Year's resolution kind of a person. So it's May and I've still stuck to it, Bruno. My resolution was to publish at least one blog post on brie.dev every month.
yeah.
And I don't know how much the team op stuff you went through, but in measurement clarity, there's a thing about changing scope, not due date. And I have
Mm.
planted that into my brain. So
Wow.
yes, it is. So here's the thing. It is sometimes 10 p.m. my time. Okay, 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m. my time. And I'm typing because I need to publish in 30 minutes. I
Yeah,
have not yet gone past the time.
yeah,
I've just like that's just I'm committing to that. The other thing that I do is shrink the thing. So do you know the TIL today I learned?
yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will put these links also somewhere, but I found there's this guy, Simon Willison. He's one of my favorite people on the entire internet. He has a TIL site, and what it is snippets. So when you learn something like some weird, cool thing about LDAP search or whatever, I write a markdown file. It's maybe 5 lines, and I put it
Mm.
on til.brie.dev. And sometimes it's not always something I learned that day. It's something I wanted to have written down to refer to later. I was playing around with image magic and found some cool image magic stuff. So I was like, well, I gotta put it somewhere. And that practice, one, it having all of those snippets is like, oh yeah, I am learning things. It's not just tickets all day every day. And they're mini blog posts. Bruno, if I'm
Yeah,
ever not sure what to write
for
about
sure.
on my blog, I have a whole bunch of examples. I
Get your
could just
snippets.
promote one of those.
Exactly. Wow,
Yeah. The
brilliant.
one other thing I'll mention, I do monthly have a standing meeting with my manager to focus on professional development. And that is
Mm,
separate from one-on-ones. We did not just bundle that into one-on-ones,
mm,
and we
mm,
don't
mm.
skip it. I remember there was one time I was like, Eric, I'm so busy. I just want to skip this. Can we do this later? And we decided, no, that's not a good idea. Don't skip your own professional development. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm really glad we didn't skip it, and I won't try to skip it again. It's okay to move it, but let's not skip it.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Wow. That was an amazing answer. Thank you so much for doing
Thank you.
that. Yeah, awesome. Like my take is that it's not so much about like how the volume of your content, like it's like setting dates and then trying to post whatever you have at that specific time. Brilliant. Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm loving
For
this, by
sure.
the way. I'm loving this.
Yay. Yay. Me too.
Okay. Awesome, awesome, cool. Okay, so as spectators, and we are like a lot, we should, we should set up a group or whatever, like Breeze fan base or something like
Oh,
that.
no, no, no.
But anyway, but yeah, like as spectators, we see the Super Brie, right? Yeah, like your amazing contributions, everything you're doing, and it's for us, it's just awesome. What I'd like to know a bit about is like, what are we not seeing? Like, what is not so visible? What is not so obvious, right, to our innocent eyes? Yeah. So can you tell us a bit about like what what are you, the effort, right? Like what are these maybe hidden things that we don't see, that you go through, that the whole world doesn't know about, but you still go through, right?
Yeah,
So mhm,
that's a great question, Bruno. And it kind of reminds me of Instagram in a way. Some
100%.
people, you look at their Instagram feed and you're
Yeah,
like, oh, wow, their life is totally amazing. And it's like, no, you're just seeing what they show.
exactly. Yeah,
And so I think there's, I don't know, because I'm on the other side of it. I think there's some of that. Here's what I will say. Us being all remote makes this very interesting. What you don't see is when Zoom is off and I'm sitting here like, why doesn't that work? I have no idea. I'm extremely frustrated. I just want to unplug my keyboard and throw it out the window. You don't, and Bruno, that happens. But then I just take a deep breath,
yeah,
go hang out with Pop, come back. And what you do see is me writing on Slack. Hi, everybody. Has anyone ever seen this super weird thing? Here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I've tried. That's the end result
yeah,
of that frustration. And Bruno, we all go through. You can look at anyone who you think like is amazing, and everyone is like a human being at the end of the day. Like,
for sure.
everyone who's amazing is a human being, and I like everybody has to just like remember that. Yeah, I will also say there were a couple points that I think we wanted to go over that I'll sort of step through.
Sure, 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 sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
sure.
Hmm.
So I am fortunate enough that this room that I'm in, this is my office in
Hmm.
my house. This is the only thing I do in this room.
Awesome.
So I don't come into this room usually unless I'm working.
Mm.
And so that creates a very obvious barrier. When I go outside, I'm not working anymore. And since I've been here for 3 years, it's important to have some
Boundaries.
barrier. Yeah.
Hmm.
Here's the other thing that you don't see. Sometimes I cannot sit in this room and work. My brain will not permit it. And so what I have to do is take my laptop and go like to a coffee shop.
Mm.
And that change, I love coffee shops so
Wow.
much. Like, yeah, but that change of pace, getting a nice fun drink, being somewhere fun helps. And I'm also focused because I'm like, I don't want to be here all day. I want to be here 90 minutes. These 4 things I need to do. My motto is plan your work your plan.
Yeah.
That's the other thing you don't see. When I'm stressed out and I have too many things to do, I'm like, okay, take 10 minutes to plan out what you need to do, what's the right priority, how much time approximately to spend on whatever, draw a line. These are the things that happen tomorrow. Okay, you've planned your work. Now go work that plan. The stress goes away because you've made a lot of the decisions about the things that are stressing you out
Yeah. Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
moment. It is fairly rare for me to like come in here and work on weekends.
Hmm.
I really try not to do that. I do work longer in the day than I should, but I'm aware of it, working on it. I'll tell
Yeah.
you, we, to talk about how I maintain some boundaries. I have hobbies. I'm a major hobby person. My hobbies do rotate a bit depending on the season and like whatever I'm interested in. But like in 2 days, I'm going to do a half marathon. So I have to have trained.
Yeah.
It's not an option to
Exactly.
like not prepare for that. So I mentioned clockwise. When clockwise says we go to lunch, I go get miles in. After work, now that the sun is out, I'm like, I don't want to be coming back from exercising in the dark. So I have to get things done so I can do all the things.
Exactly. Yeah. So that forces you to make certain adjustments in order to have those hobbies and have those boundaries. Awesome. Awesome. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say
Awesome.
exercise, it's not just so I can do half marathons, right?
Mhm.
Exercise, it for me personally is amazing for my mood and for stress. The best feeling is like when you go work is for me is when I go work out when I don't feel like it. I never am done exercising and like, oh, that was terrible. I really hate that I did that. I'm always like, oh, I feel great. And today was awesome.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. 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 Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant. Wow, like I'm amazed. Thank you so much. Especially the part where you said that, okay, so some days, as my understanding, you're working longer, right? But you're still working on that, right? You're still adjusting it. So yeah, days are different. So yeah, same. Awesome. Like brilliant. Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing. We're okay. I promise that these questions will eventually stop. But for now, let's keep
It's
going. I'm
good. No, this
loving
is really
this.
good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is amazing, amazing. So I think you talked a bit about this already, but like yeah, I was gonna ask you about how you make sure that your routine is sustainable. So I think you answered a bit of that.
I have a little
But
more to
yeah,
say if you don't
yes,
mind.
yes, please, yes, please, yes,
Okay.
please.
And I will
Yeah,
be brief. So change the routine sometimes.
yeah,
I feel like habits
cool.
is good, ruts are not good. So
Yeah.
I'm always curating my habits, right? So I'm dropping old habits that no longer serve me and
Mhm,
adding new
mhm.
habits that my habits are I always have habits, but what they are differs. The thing I've learned about myself is habit and structure make me happy. I just they not everyone feels that way, but for me it helps. Burnout. I just want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
You had asked like how do you make sure you don't burn out? My hot take on this, Bruno, is you don't. Like ideally, yeah, but burnout happens. Let's not pretend that like the end goal is prevent burnout. Cool, we prevented burnout, it'll never happen. We don't have to talk about the rest of it. Burnout happens. So I think it's important to prevent, but it's sort of like security, defense in depth. Prevent it if you can, detect it,
yeah,
treat it, recover, and then go about your life. I mean, I really like the HBR, Harvard Business Review books. I'm a big
mhm,
airport book person, but they have one on burnout. And that was really what got me thinking about identifying and recovering burnout in addition to just preventing it. Because I think we're really missing an important conversation if we only talk about preventing burnout.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excellent. This reminds me of driving a car. Like when I was learning, the only way to know the limits of the car was to slowly bump into something, like slowly, and everyone goes through that, I think, at some point. Like, or at least you almost hit something, like I don't know, you're parking your car, for example, right? So, and you start doing it really slowly, and like for a moment, I remember like one time I bumped into another car, I think. Like, but it was really slowly, nothing happened, but I knew, oh, this is the limit. Like, this is the limit. Like, so when my rear view mirror looks like this, I'm really close, or I'm about to hit something. Yeah, so that reminds me of it. So, okay, so yeah, detect it, like you bumped into something, right? Detect it, and then like treat it, like
Yeah.
move away from it, right? Like so that makes total sense. And then try to avoid it next time. Like when you see, oh, the rear view mirror is really close again, so I'm not gonna move
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So that's thank you so much. That was fantastic. Yeah, burnout is real. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
I would just
sure.
say two things. I love that story and sort of thinking about the rear view mirror, because that's a good way to, just think about your mental rear view mirror.
Yeah.
The other thing is I would just say, like, since we're recording this, yeah, the goal is avoid burnout, but also be kind to yourself. If you are
True.
like, hey, I'm burned out, don't stress yourself out further about the fact that you're burned out. It's okay. Do what you need to do to come back. What I always sort of like say to people like in my SGG is like, we'll get through the day. I care about you being there and like able to be the best engineer you can be in the long term. Day to day, we'll get through the day to day. This is about like sustainable
Yeah.
excellence.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Awesome. So this will be the hardest question, I think, on
Okay.
for today. Okay, yeah, we're ending, I think, but yeah, this is going to be a little bit tough, but it's going to help a lot of people, I'm sure. So, what I like to know, like, what's your view on like there's this side gig culture, right? Side gig culture, sorry, on the web right now. Like, oh, you should diversify your sources of income and all that. And my understanding is that this view of the world, this culture evolved because of the recent events in the tech industry as a whole, right? So it was already there, but now it just got like it's more apparent now. So I'd like to know your take on it because I see you as a very focused person, right? So I'd like to know like how do you deal with that and also those kind of like insecurities, right? So I think that this culture evolved because of some insecurities, right? So yeah, I'd like to know your thoughts about that. Mhm.
For sure. Yeah, so I think you're right that it's not new, this hustle culture, but it's definitely much more prominent given like recent events. Like caveats, we all know. I think this is an extremely individual situational question,
Mhm.
but I'm the individual that you're asking in this situation, so I'll proceed.
Yes.
I personally, I don't think it should be necessary. I don't think it should be necessary to
Mm.
have a side gig to support yourself. I don't think that should be necessary. But we don't live in utopia.
Sure.
So I fully understand that for some people, that having that side gig or that hustle or whatever is what helps them deal with the insecurity of what could happen at any time. Personally, I put that sort of insecurity in the life is hard, unexpected things happen, and but this feels like not great, but I kind of think about all is well that ends well. It's incredibly painful. I don't want to mention anything. It's incredibly painful as it's happening. But in the end, all is well. And I've gone through long periods of all is not well.
Mm.
But I do believe that, like, if it's not okay, it's not the end. Right. Okay. I do I'm a focused person, but I'm also an enthusiastic person. I like to do computer related things that are not my job.
Mhm.
I like that very much. It's sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I hate computers and I think they should go away. But I love making websites. Now that I'm not doing it for other people, it's funny. I like websites specifically when they are not a side hustle. Being paid to make websites for people, I don't want to do it, Bruno. I won't do it. Okay, probably for the right amount I would, but I don't want to do it. For myself, for fun, I
Mhm.
love it. I do it all the time. You have no idea how many subdomains I have off of my websites. It's fun.
Wow.
I do, my blog comes to mind. I will say I'm very conscious of my blog as my representation of myself to the world and its utility for people to understand who I am and like what I can do, what I'm capable of. You mentioned insecurity. Imposter syndrome is real. Bruno, every time I publish a blog post, every time, it's very hard for me to not delete it. I'm like, why did I write that? Everyone's gonna think I'm stupid. There's probably typos I can't see. And I know. I'm just being vulnerable and telling you what's like inside my
Yeah.
brain in moments of weakness.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad I haven't deleted my blog.
Me too. Me too.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me too. And I think I read your your post, your article, I'll call it an article about your
Thank
talk.
you.
And
Yes.
yes, and it was really well written. And I think it was there that I read that what you know matters, what you can figure out. And let me stress this part, what you can figure out will take you home. I think that was the phrase. And
Yes.
oh my God, I loved it. I love that phrase because it's so true. It's
Yes.
not about like, okay, what you know matters, fine. Okay, you know it, cool. But what you can figure out, like what you can discover, what you can find out, what you like, thank you
Bruno.
so much for not deleting that article. I mean, yeah,
You're
yes,
welcome. Two
yeah,
quick things
yeah.
on that.
Yeah, sure.
It's actually, I just want to hat tip Jason Young is the person who I chatted with about that. And it was very, that hit home for me too. Like it really
Yeah.
hit home for me. That's why I put it there. The other thing, if we can splice in a screenshot or link or something, I added a bunch of emoji to how I described that sentiment. I changed it in the blog post, but
Oh,
it was
cool.
fewer words, more emoji in the talk. So I'll see if I can find that for you.
Sure, sure, sure.
But yeah, I think that thank you for bringing that up because that's the thing I want to show people. Like
Yeah.
another way I say it is like, have you ever met a baby who knows anything about Kubernetes? No, you haven't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But eventually,
Yep, they learn.
eventually they learn. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's so true. So yeah, my understanding is that you focus your attention on what you're doing and you prepare yourself mentally for whatever might come, knowing that you can always figure something out, right? Like in yeah, you can always go through stuff. You can yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Because I just want to say this. This question is really important because there's a lot of conflict inside me, at least. I don't know about other people, other engineers. There's a lot of conflict about like I know that I'm a person that thrives on focus, right? But this culture sometimes, they hit some weak spots, and I tend to like, should I do this or should I not do this or should I do this? Like, yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that it'll be also valuable for other engineers and people in general.
for sure. Can I add? I just want to add one note. You made me think of something that I put in my April blog post
Oh wow.
really quickly. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we were in Alaska at the Klondike Gold Rush Trail thing. And there was a note from a gold
Cool.
miner. Basically, in the gold rush, you had to either take the short in duration, dangerous, perilous path, which cost you less money in rations,
Mm,
or you take the slower, safer path where you have to spend money on 6 months of rations. You have to choose. And there's this gold miner who's quoted as saying, whichever way you go, you'll wish you'd gone the other way.
wow.
And I keep that in mind because I'm like, you know what? At a certain point, you do have to make a decision and know that there are consequences. You could have made the other decision. You cannot spend the rest of your life worrying about, should I have done this?
Yeah. 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 Cool. Cool. Wow. I'm loving this. Okay.
Me too. Yay.
Awesome. 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 Okay. So let's move to the fun side of things.
Yay.
So, what is the most fun thing you have done at GitLab?
So this one is really hard. And I'm going to cheat a little bit and say the most
Yeah.
fun recent thing I've done at GitLab.
Yeah.
So we formed a team for trivia for intergenerational week. There's another word to the week. We formed a trivia team. The
Okay.
team name was all emoji, obviously, and we won. And it was all GitLab support people. So that was extremely fun, Bruno, and like yay support. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, like your love for emojis, I can call it that. Like, yeah, it's so good because it sets the tone for the things you're writing, like before emojis, we didn't have that, right? And because we now have them, we can say something, write something, and then put a little emoji, and it sets the tone for the whole like sentence or paragraph or whatever. And I love when you do it and when you do that, like, yeah, because this is supposed to be something light, or this is supposed to be serious, or this is supposed to be fun. Like, yeah. So thank you so much
It's
for doing
important.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
obviously.
It
Of
is.
course.
It is, it is, it is. So yeah, I am out of questions. I think this was amazing. I got so much out of it. You have no idea. You're an amazing person, Brie. I
Bruno,
respect you, your work,
thank you.
all you are. So thank you so much for accepting this. I don't want to make you cry, but
No, it's good. I just want to make sure to thank Bruno when you first
yeah.
proposed this and I
Mhm.
saw the questions list, which is public and people can view. I was blown away. Like You've done an amazing thing here. I'm glad that we did this. This is awesome.
Cool, cool. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And yeah, so if you want to say anything else before we close, you can. But if you don't, it's cool. We can wrap it up. And yeah, and share it hopefully with everyone we can.
This is awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the time, genuinely.
Thank you, Brie. Awesome. Bye.